the Drivers Unite movement. May 8th today, all over the country, all over the world, you have drivers that are uniting. Why are they uniting? Because we have to speak out against the abuses of corporate horrendous practices. Uber and Lyft are the poster child of these horrendous corporate practices. We need to stand together in unity, and right now, over at the Uber headquarters, they are rallying over there, and there's hundreds of people. But we thought to bring it to the city and let them know that this is a problem that started here in San Francisco. The officials here, the regulators here, the CPUC right over here, California Public Utilities Commission, they were the ones that let the cat out of the bag. They have a love affair with tech that has to stop. They've been giving away the keys to the city for far too long. They are saying that these guys are still startups. How long before they're no longer startups? They're saying they don't understand or know what to do with this technology. There's no excuses. If you don't know what to do, then step aside and let someone else do the job. It's that simple, people. But we have to command and demand that these folks here behind these doors work for us. We pay the bill. We put on the lights. So it is required for them to answer to us, but we have to do the proper ask. We have to demand that they answer to us with the responsibility that they owe us as citizens and residents of California and of this city, San Francisco. So we are here, we have the socialist workers, and this fine gentleman is here, and he is running for mayor. So I'm going to hand the mic over to him. He could introduce himself. And thank you for coming out and supporting the Drivers Unite movement here today, May 8th, nationwide and internationally. In the UK, in Australia, they've already done their protests. In New York City, Philadelphia, the East Coast, Chicago, all these cities are participating today, people. Today, Drivers Unite. Here you have it.
Well, thank you. I'm Joel Britton, Socialist Workers Party candidate for mayor of San Francisco. At the action at the Uber headquarters on Market, Uber drivers told me that right exactly when the gas prices skyrocketed in recent weeks, that's exactly when Uber cut the rates. That's outrageous. Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, all so-called gig workers need to be treated as employees, not independent contractors. So that's another demand that is, I think, very, very, very important. And I believe that there's a potential for drivers to be united across Uber, Lyft, limo drivers, and taxi drivers, and fight for organization, united organization that could fight for being represented in this very important struggle with these bosses, the taxi bosses, the Uber bosses, Lyft bosses, and so forth. Edward, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, folks, also for coming out in support from the Socialist Workers Party. Of course, if you'd like to grab a sign and participate, that's what makes it all together. We pull together. Obviously, the sign is pretty self-explanatory, as you see, because Uber is doing this to us. And I'm a driver. I've been a driver more than 5 years now. More than 5 years. I've driven with 11 different companies. And it does hurt when you see the type of human suffering that is going on, not just here, but nationally. We have the 9th suicide that's just happened in New York City, the 9th suicide. So it is important that we bring these stories forward into the media so that they know what's going on. This morning, I did an interview with Rose Aguilar on KALW, and she was talking about how this impact on society, and in particular San Francisco, how nothing's being done about it. Nothing's being done about it because we, the people, have to stand and unite to get something done. It doesn't happen on its own. It's something that we have to make happen in unity. Right now, there are folks that are rallying over at the headquarters, world headquarters of Uber. Just recently, Lyft also released their IPO, and their stock has already dropped from 87 to the lower 50s. That means that there is no sustainable value there. It is dropping, and it will drop further as the Uber IPO comes online. The Uber IPO is scheduled to come on board Friday, May 10th. So we need everyone to be aware of what's going on. This is fraud because they are bilking the public investors and not telling them the truth. They're not providing the full disclosures of how unsustainable this business is, the Uber and Lyft model. It is built on the backs of the exploitation of the workforce. This is fraudulent misrepresentation, but it's also misclassification of employment. The misclassification of employment is against the law. If you call a person an independent contractor, you have to be able to prove that that is the case. It is not the case, and they know it. With the introduction of the Dynex ruling, unanimous California State Supreme Court ruling, they have already begun to codify through AB5. If you check out hashtag AB5, and that'll tell you the codification of this unanimous California State Supreme Court ruling. This has a 3-point test that will help to set the record straight. What will happen is that drivers are going to be given a fair shake. Workers are going to be given a fair shake. It is going to require that the employers prove that the worker is actually an independent contractor. It will be assumed that all workers are employees unless the employer proves otherwise. It is very essential that we get the word out and let the public know to support AB5. Hello everyone and welcome. Today we come together celebrating the rights of workers to protest on a historic day of unity and solidarity for the rideshare industry nationally and internationally. I'm Edward Escobar, the founder of the Alliance for Independent Workers. We're providing advocacy for gig workers' rights globally. We are the Drivers Unite movement. We are the tip of the spear in the new alternative labor movement. And we are standing here today against the Uber IPO and Uber's oppressive nature in undermining the hard-fought victories achieved by labor activists that have come before us, those that fought and died for the rights of workers around the world to rise up in protest of violations of workers' rights. So together, we stand here today for positive change in the workplace, for not just drivers, but for all workers. Si se puede? Yes, we can. Now, as we face this daunting challenge of shaping the future of work, the AIW supports a nonpartisan effort to identify concrete ways to address the challenges American workers are facing due to the changing nature of work in the 21st century. Now, there are several trends that are increasingly impacting workers today that will bring about dramatic transformations in the years ahead, such as the weakening social contract between workers and employers, the increased importance of providing access to education and skills to better transition workers in preparation for working with the new technologies and increased automation as they roll out. And finally, the most challenging, which is the extreme profit motive of corporations to produce short-term profits rather than the long-term value, which severely destabilizes the workforce in the long run. Now, rather than waiting to react to future disruptions as experienced by societal disruptors like Uber and Lyft, the AIW has determined it is critical to anticipate and develop solutions that address the changes transforming the U.S. economy ahead of the curve and not after, when irreparable damage is done, and it is then more costly to taxpayers who would end up default funding the corporation's bottom line profits. Now, the Alliance Drivers Unite National Movement is focusing on promoting proactive policy ideas on the future of work within the gig economy at the federal, state, and local level to address the following: improve economic security for independent contract workers and prevent the undermining of full-time workers' employment. Expand investment in and provide access to effective education and training programs, preparing workers for impact of technology, providing transitional guidance and assistance for the labor force, as some workers will be permanently displaced. Also, address the social contract of corporate responsibility with public companies that have overly prioritized short-term profits instead of investment in long-term value creation that is sustainable for society. Bring the gig workers narrative to the national media. Gig workers represent a third of the workforce and growing to 40% in the next couple of years. It is projected to increase to 50% by 2027, as they are becoming the silent majority. Furthermore, the AIW is addressing many serious issues concerning the future of work, gig economy, rideshare industry workers, and the impact of technology on society, such as public safety, environmental impact concerns, legislative checks and balances for technology, prevention and misclassification of employment, fair, just, and equitable compensation and treatment of workers, stopping wage theft, providing workplace safety and protections, encourage the enforcement of fair competition via the Sherman Antitrust Act, promote professional and safety standards for rideshare drivers to be on par with the taxi industry, addressing the issues of the impending privatization of public transportation, proactively pursuing the discussion on the devastating impact of self-driving technology on our workforce as the future of work is rolled out. Now, unfortunately, due to the lack of proper checks and balances in place for the control of new technologies, as Uber Lyft exploded onto the scene, there have been significant abuses of the labor force that have led to workers being pushed to the point of work exhaustion and beyond, as they are increasingly forced to work more while making less, as was the case of Doug Shifter, a 61-year-old livery driver who committed suicide on the steps of New York City Hall in February 2018. In such dire circumstances, Doug sometimes had to work more than 100 hours a week just to survive, compared to when he started in the 1980s, when a 40-hour work week was fairly typical, working more and making less and less and less. Doug blamed the politicians, Mayors Michael Bloomberg, Bill de Blasio, and Governor Cuomo. They're catering to the rich by permitting so many cars to flood the streets of New York. He blamed the Taxi and Livery Commission for extreme fines and constant hassles it imposed. Losing his health insurance and accruing too much credit card debt, he could no longer work for chump change, preferring, he said, to die, ladies and gentlemen, in the hope that his sacrifice would draw attention to the worsening plight of drivers that were too often unable to feed their families, struggling to survive he warned of this impending doom in columns he wrote for the trade publication Black Car News. He wrote and wrote and wrote, but few listened. In Doug's testament was the growing frustration, the deprofessionalization of his life's work. Doug drove more than 5 million miles throughout his entire career, enduring 5 hurricanes and 50 snowstorms. He chauffeured celebrities, always wearing his black suit and tie with a smile. He was not driving a car to supplement his income. This was his full-time job that he did with pride and professionalism. He was not a participant in the gig economy. He was a casualty of it. This New York City driver's suicide reveals the dark side of the gig economy. Doug Shifter, dead at age 61. At this time, let us all give a moment of silence for Doug and the many other labor activists that have sacrificed their lives for the rights of workers around the world. And may they all rest in peace, knowing their sacrifices will not go in vain, as we will continue this fight in global worker solidarity against corporations that are putting profits before people. Now, we call upon everyone to learn from the past. We cannot and will not be doomed to repeat its mistakes when we, the workers, stand together in solidarity. In closing, I leave you with these powerful words from Mario Savio, Sproul Hall Steps, 1964. There is a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even possibly take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears, upon the levers, upon the wheels, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all. Mario Savio, 1964, Berkeley Sproul Hall. Powerful words. Si se puede? Yes, we can. Si se puede? Yes, we can. Si se puede? Yes, we can. Drivers unite. Thank you.